Just a decade ago, indie horror games were blowing up, and for good reason. But now, look at games like Security Breach and Garten of Banban. It's just not the same. These games used to scare us, intrigue us at the least, but that seems like a distant memory for something so recent. And guess what? It's our fault. Before we understand why, though, we need to go back to August of 2014. The still praised poster boy of this genre surfaced. Scott Cawthon released Five Nights at Freddy's, and it blew up overnight. A new game had basically appeared out of thin air, receiving little recognition or support before launch. Markiplier gave the game life, deciding to give it a shot, which snowballed and had all famous Let's Players on it within a week. Many were calling it the scariest game in years, and although this was an exaggeration, it was far from a lie. The simple reason why it became a phenomenon is the way it messed with your senses, as well as your mind. The ever-present droning of the fan, coupled with the white noise in and around the office, puts you on edge. The random jarring sounds that occur every so often and the iconic jump scares throw you off your senses. The concept of sitting defenseless in a room, constantly checking your sparse ways of keeping yourself safe. It's terrifying to me, at least in concept, but also exciting. The horror isn't used to scare you to your mother's bedroom floor, but it's used as a tool to keep you invested. You see, after FNAF succeeded, many more developers wanted to hop on the trend of this kind of game. This brought around the existence of games such as Bendy and the Ink Machine and the infamous Poppy Playtime, which in all honesty, aren't scary. Poppy Playtime had so much potential, and while it was a good concept, the game just wasn't that good. It had all the hallmarks of something that was made for kids, which is something we'll touch on later. This game tries to be scary by utilizing chase scenes and cheap jump scares to catch you out, and none of it feels well thought out or original. As well as these, Mascot horror has infected Roblox, with games surfacing left, right, and center. It feels as if we, as content consumers, have created a standard for games we collectively disagree with, but still endorse. All of these games in the Mascot horror genre have been dwindling in quality due to one major factor. They're being catered to kids. This kind of marketing is also affecting the good horror games, as they aren't being given time in the spotlight. So where did we go wrong here? The answer, my friends, is YouTube. Influencers, as is their name, have substantial influence on the games people play. A channel which caters only to younger audiences follows whatever game will get the most views and pumps out low-quality videos. If you look at the most recent uploads of these channels, half of them are stupid Roblox games that call themselves horror games. In reality, they are colorful messes with a shoehorned randomly selected horror icon. The rest of the games they play are things like Garten of Banban, which I refuse to call a horror game. Developers love when they can get a boost from a popular creator playing their game, so they cater to the creators, who are catering to children, which gives developers a template. This loop just keeps trapping games in a cycle. We keep supporting them unintentionally, not because they're good games, because we want to make fun of how bad they are, or milk them dry for views. We call this hate watching, or I guess, hate playing. It doesn't matter if you're doing it quote-unquote ironically. You're still funding the product, ergo, the producer, giving more developers the initiative to make easy money. The genre has gone from giving us some of the most effective horror games ever to copy-pasted bore fests. The genre has been intoxicated, with breaths of clean air being few and far between. Another big issue is theories. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely adore game theory and everyone else working on theory crafting. My issue is when episodic games like Bendy and Poppy Playtime take too much influence from these theories and the game becomes a mismatched mess of random crap they added in to dodge theories and prove people wrong. One of the most notable instances of this was Hello Neighbor. It started by having a really interesting concept, that being you break into the house of a mysterious neighbor and then must escape undetected. It started out solid. But once they started implementing lore, the whole game began to fall apart. They had pinged MatPat on Twitter several times begging for a theory on their game. Then there were books and an unwarranted amount of spin-offs. It became a mess. None of it made sense anymore. Therefore, it lost its effectiveness. Issues like this not only appear in games, but in analog horror videos nowadays too. It's very easy to fall into the trap of sticking a VHS filter over a slideshow of unsettling images and calling it a period piece. The genre has simply fallen into disrepair because we are treating carbon copies as gods. Look at Urban Spook, the creator of the analog horror series, The Painter. His series is basically, as I described earlier, a slideshow of uncanny images with some text and a VHS filter. His series also has an overemphasis on being gory, which, contrary to popular belief, doesn't make a good story. His series should be heavily criticized for its major flaws, and for the most part it is, but you still see so many people calling his content a breath of fresh air, when in reality, it's quite the opposite. I believe a breath of fresh air would be a slow and well-paced narrative story. It's quite sad that would be something to celebrate. And what's the common denominator between both of these issues? It's us. It's our fault that this has happened. As the old saying goes, nothing good lasts forever. And while that's true, nothing bad does either. We can make changes and we can fix what's wrong. Maybe even one day, we can relive our old memories that we made. Getting terrified of games like the original Five Nights at Freddy's games. Talking with friends in elementary school about games we weren't allowed to play. The most recognizable quote from FNAF 4 sums up our situation perfectly. Tomorrow is another day.